Good morning, Tim.
Let's go,
Morning.
Tim.
Thanks for coming. The end.
We heard you were speaking, so.
Yes. So, I'll tell you a little story. Many of you know that Rob, a previous member, bought a house a few months ago. And he did call me after settlement and said, we're interested in solar, just want to get sort of our feet wet and understand what our bills are going to look like, and sort of dive into it. So he called me yesterday and said that he met with his Sunrun rep. I think, Troken, you have a relative that works for Sunrun.
Yeah.
So Rob met with the Sunrun rep, and he said, I said, what'd you talk about? He said, both the lease and a purchase, because I told him we're more interested in a purchase, cash preferably. And he said, and he gave me the cash price, and he goes, and my jaw is still on the floor. He goes, it was just crazy expensive. So I said, okay. He said, and then he talked about a lease. He said, yeah, well, the purchase option was $500 a month. I said, well, so you're financing? He goes, no, I told him cash. I said, well, where's the $500 a month coming from? If you're buying it cash, he's like, I don't know. And he said the lease was like 2.25. And I said, okay, well, you didn't move forward with anything, did you? He goes, no. He goes, I didn't sign anything. I signed a bunch of papers, but I didn't sign any. I'm like, well, wait a minute, what?
What did you sign?
Yeah, you didn't sign anything, but you signed a bunch of papers. He goes, yeah, there's a bunch of papers I was signing. It's like, send me what you signed. So he did. I'm sure he signed other things, but one of the things he signed was an interconnection application. It's an application that accompanies every solar project. You need to apply to interconnect your system with the local utility grid. Sometimes it gets approved, sometimes it gets reduced, sometimes it gets rejected altogether. So you need to have that approval before you install solar, because there are companies out there, believe it or not, that install just to be quick and to also make you feel obligated. But once it's on your roof, you're not going to cancel. You're obligated now, as opposed to waiting the 2 months it takes to get all the approvals. Someone might get cold feet and decide, oh, maybe I don't want to do this.
Right.
So to protect themselves, the contractor wants to install quick, but when you do that, you run the risk of it not getting approved. Or maybe you install a 10K system and they approve the 7K system. So now you got to either remove some panels or all the panels, and then cover up the holes that you made. It's not a great experience, and it's not legitimate. It's not legal to do it. So I responded to his email basically saying, congratulations, you went solar. But these are the types of things, I'm not sure, I wasn't
He's
there.
forced?
No, I don't know how it was positioned. Did they tell him this is only X, but really it was something else?
But is he legally bound to work?
No,
with
there's obviously a right to rescind.
It's a 3-day.
Yes, and depending on the contract, it could be 10. But the reality is that, especially with a lease, there's not a whole lot they can do until it's on your roof. I've had someone who was 3 months in, and he called me when we were ready to install, and he called me and said, I'm not going to be able to do this. My wife came home last week and said she doesn't want to be married anymore, and I'm moving out. So, and we were $6,000 invested in the project already, but it is the cost of doing business. There's not a whole lot you can do. We could probably send him an invoice, but he may or may not pay it. It wouldn't be good PR and that type of thing. So we do take certain level of risk, cost when you go down that road, and until it's on your roof, there's really no financial obligation or anything in it for us. But my concern is that I hear this a lot, is that people say I didn't know what I was doing, I didn't understand. He said I was just running a soft credit check, and you just need to sign these 15 forms, and then we can get you approved for credit, even though we know you haven't committed to anything.
I thought Rob was a little smart. Why, if he's paying cash, why would he do a soft credit check?
I don't want to really go down that road, just because I don't want to make him feel like he did something that maybe he shouldn't have. Or my goal is to just get him to the right place. So I put together a purchase option for him. Now he did say that the Sunrun purchase option was $94,000.
Wow.
So I did a purchase option for him that was going to produce more than the other one, slightly bigger system. And I came in at $37,500. So both he and his wife were on the phone. We talked. She asked questions. Then we concluded.
37.5 is more like what he expected.
Well, she had to run to a meeting. She sent him a text saying, "Why is this pricing so low?" And I explained it's not that my pricing's low, it's that they're taking advantage.
Does where you live have an impact on the price as far as approvals and such?
No. I mean, permits and things could
Well,
be
yeah, I
more or less
understand that.
expensive, but we tend to charge per watt, regardless of the area that you live in, so the pricing should be very comparable regardless if you live in Cranberry or live in Pennsylvania. You know, the one factor, obviously, the cost of energy is different. PSE&G is more expensive than, say, PECO or other Pennsylvania. Right. And it's not the first time recently that I've been challenged because my pricing was too low. That he basically said, I'm nervous, you know, you get what you pay for, you're so much less than this company. And I basically said, I'm happy to charge you an extra $5,000, I can put that right in my pocket. I said, I want to be to you what I would want someone to be to me. Is that yes, we're not volunteers, we are making margin here, but this is a fair margin. We don't need to take advantage of you. And that's what some people do. They pull a fast one. I mean, now Rob, who is a bright guy, he didn't even know he was signing an agreement that said he's moving forward with a solar project. You know, so I'm not sure how it was positioned, what
What
was
they
said. But this is part of the reason why it's such a challenge for folks in my position, that you have to really gain their trust and for them to believe that you're going to take care of it, you're going to do what's honest, you're going to do what's right, and not like some of the stories I've heard.
Your equipment was no
I don't know the
cheaper?
details, but for the most part, the equipment is very comparable. Sometimes we use premium panels, which, when that's the case, it's a little bit more expensive, but we know that there is no way they have better. So I think it's at least comparable. You'd be hard pressed to find a contractor who's using garbage now. Most of those are using what they call tier 1 quality products. There are different levels of quality, but for the most part, it's not terrible. Did you have a question, Mark?
How many kW system will you figure out for him?
16.2?
Be a lot smaller than what I would need.
Yeah, you'd need something much larger. Now, he's got an east-west roof, he's got trees in the front, which turned out to be okay because his wife doesn't want panels in front of the house. So we're using the westerly roof. Again, it's a heavily wooded area, it's decent for solar, but it's not great. I mean, we're looking for sort of a 1-to-1 ratio or better. That's basically the kilowatts versus the kilowatt hours. Theirs is slightly below that, it's about 95.95, but it's reasonable. It's not great, but it's decent. And he doesn't have a year's worth of history, so it's hard to know exactly what his needs are going to be. We use a load calc that predicts it roughly, but it's still not exact. People have different habits. Some people might like a house cold or hot, and so that can impact their usage data. But it does give us options to size it appropriately, so you can basically oversize a system to account for any future needs. Whereas if you had a 12-month history, the utility looks at that and says, that's how you can size the system. You can't get much more than that. So if you want to put in a hot tub, I'm up top. You know, apply for solar when you have the hot tubs. Or I'm getting an electric car, it needs to be in your driveway before you so they're okay.
I was gonna say, do they need to change the electrical panels in those type of cases when you get solar installed?
You don't have to. I mean, part of the inspection is to know what the.
Does it help?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not necessarily. I mean,
Oh, okay.
you could be adequately, have everything adequate and you no longer need it, or
Mhm.
don't need it. Sometimes it could be old and say, listen, this is not gonna work. Now, you can roll that in and it could become part of the project cost and therefore part of the investment tax credit, if it's needed.
Yeah, because I know my parents, when we were installing the Tesla charger, the electrician was concerned that it wouldn't be able to carry that, and he might have to upgrade to a 200 watt or
200
K-watt or whatever.
200
Yeah, 200 amp. Yeah.
Right.
And when they ended up actually doing the records, he was like, "Oh, actually, you're only running around a 100 amp type of thing right now. We're putting an extra 20 on for that, and you've got a 150 or something like that." So they didn't need to update. But.
Okay. It's always a possibility, but that's part of what a site survey reveals. We want to make sure that there are no surprises when we show up and say, oh, by the way, it's going to be $4,000 for this, and there's another charge over here we didn't think about, and you don't want to hear that. Yeah, Mark.
I think Steve had a question before me.
How long do the leases go for when someone says, I just want the cheapest, I'll lease it?
Typically, it's 20 to 25 years, depending on the company.
25.
Yeah. Now, I know, people say, well, I don't want to commit to that long. And my response to that typically is, how long is your commitment to the utility company? Seriously, how long is it? It's forever. So, I'm sorry, I can't guarantee you savings for more than 25 years. Yeah, it is a commitment, but it's a commitment to save money, so who wouldn't be for that?
So
Now,
covering the equipment for that lease period?
yeah, it's all encompassing warranties, production guarantees. Someone who said, financially, and I said this to Rob, I said, financially, you're gonna save more money with a purchase versus a lease. However, lost opportunity costs. Where are those funds coming from? What could those funds do for you if they were invested somewhere else? And that's a relevant question. I had someone who said, I'm making 40% over here, I'm not taking money out of that fund to pay for solar, I'll do a lease. A lease is better than nothing, and in his case, it was better than doing it.
What happens if you move though? You commit to a 25-year lease and you move after 6
The
years?
lease goes to the new buyer.
You're effed.
But what if
No.
the new buyer doesn't want it?
Then
Well,
they
they don't
they'll
buy
buy
the
your
house.
house and they go to the next
Well,
one.
it's like if you put in a pool. And you say, okay, a pool may appeal to some people and it may not appeal to other people. And if you list it on the sale,
It's a feature of the sale.
you'd be
Okay.
surprised that everyone who showed up at your house and say, I don't want solar, like I clearly listed it was a solar house. Why are you coming to see a solar house if you don't want solar?
I don't mind a lot of rejection to solar. Not a lot, there's a little bit, not much.
I'm on the fence with this whole thing. As you know, I'm kind of like, I've now finally got my new building facing the right way, so,
I just need you to sign here, hang on.
okay.
He doesn't have a.
He's just gonna run a credit check.
Sign
How
before
close, how close
I'll get to you in a second.
of a production savings to what the actual utility is to actually make this neutral for me? Can that be, what I'm trying to say is, the amount of my lease, because obviously my situation is probably gonna be a lease,
Mhm.
is that lease payment most likely gonna be covered by my savings of power generation?
A lease is not money on top of what you're already paying.
I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, if my lease payment is $100 or $250 a month, am I gonna save $250 off my JCP and A?
You have to save at least that, or you can't do a lease. A lease has to be cash flow positive day one.
Okay,
So
so,
if you're spending $250 and you say, okay, I can't offset all of my power, I'm still gonna have a bill of $50 with the power company.
That'd be
and-
nice.
And my lease payment is $150. I'm just pulling numbers, okay, so total between what I still owe the
so
utility-
basically what you're telling me, like I said, I got $750 a month electric bills. I mean,
And could you imagine if you lived in AC electric territory, it would double that?
Well, some months are 400.
Well, that's cheap compared to Chuck's.
so basically what we're saying here, I gotta be almost penny wise, pound foolish not to entertain this, because
If you only look at the numbers, I mean, I've had people look at that and say, Tim, I'd have to be an idiot not to do this. Financially, yes, but it is not like changing to, wind power versus this. I mean, we're putting something on your roof and you're committed to a period of time. So, I don't pretend that it's just simple as you're saving $50 a month, why would you do this? Don't be stupid. You do need to think about, as a realtor would say, that, okay, when you do eventually sell this house, is this gonna be an issue? It does appeal to more people than it turns off,
are leases able to be bought out?
yes.
So
You
if
can
I
buy
hit
it out either after 5 years or when you move or anytime after 5 years. Financially, you don't enter into a lease with that expectation, because if you were gonna buy it out, why not just buy it to begin with? Because then you're getting the investment tax credit, which you wouldn't get if you buy it down the road. However, if 5 years from now you say, I'm moving, what do I owe? I can add that, or some of it, to the cost of the resale value of the house. Right now, as Ralph would say, is that, Tim, it's a feature, it's not anything that's gonna increase the value. That could change, it's potentially gonna change.
The market's so high right now that because I have solar, it's not necessarily any heating.
He says it makes the house more appealing, but they may not be willing to go into their pocket for any more money, number one. And number two, the mortgage company may not be willing to lend you any.
However, on your house, the size, we're doing with order of size, right? The size of your house, it may actually add value. Because the cost of operating that house are,
Astronomical.
they're high. For
I
somebody.
love the way you
And-
said it's high.
Yeah, they're high. They're and so solar would mitigate a lot of that, a lot of it.
I mean, my only big concern is, like I said, we're gonna sit down and talk, obviously now, because I'm more on the fence with this. But my only thing is, if I put this out there and I'm paying $300 a month for a lease or my loan payment or whatever, I don't even care if it's neutral at this point. But if I'm gonna be like guaranteed, I'm gonna save $300 off my PSE or JCP&L bill, but I still have a $300 lease payment. All right, fine, whatever. You know, but I don't want to have
You
a
have to be positive.
exactly. I don't want to have a $300 lease payment, but I've only saved $150 on
No,
my.
you don't want costs to go up.
That's the
mean-
exact same situation that I was in when I called him about solar in my house. Because my bill is, like you
This is
said,
$1,000.
$1,000 a month.
Well, you got all them kids.
And I don't
whatever
have
they want.
gas, just do that. But my complaint was the same as yours. And Timber figured out that it's not gonna
At
work.
this time, I'm still working with another contractor who's giving me better pricing, also is willing to roll in a roof. Not every contractor will do that. And I'm waiting to get final numbers, and the reason I'm not is that they just recently are
So if
waiting
you
for
can
their
make
big
something work,
license.
that
Right,
is
so
still
Chuck basically,
interesting.
hey, if it could be washed and I can get a roof out of the deal, to him, that looks like a win, and I'm gonna see if that's possible.
What do you mean a walk?
But my question
You
was,
Bill walk.
save money?
Alright,
Let me just,
I did have a question.
Sure.
What do you see in repairs on these things and maintenance?
well, everything's covered for 25 years, there is no
But do you
preventative.
see a lot of repairs and is there a lot of maintenance?
Occasionally. I mean,
What type of
occasionally.
repairs like would you see?
An inverter goes. Typically panels don't break. It's not possible, but typically.
I mean, I've been on roofs all my life, obviously, and I've seen a lot of solar panel systems. I don't see that there's much maintenance.
There is not. There's no preventative maintenance. Some people might say you have to clean them, and typically you don't. Although I see that changing in the future. There might be a contract. They can come out twice a year for $100 and clean your panels.
If the panel
symptoms
got
out,
broke,
does it?
Yes, I'll be on your.
if the panel got broke, so I was on the roof doing chimney work or something, and I dropped a hammer and broke a panel. Can you replace just that one panel?
Yes, yes. I wouldn't tell anyone that's what happened because that's not a warranty
A
item.
branch fell on it.
That's an insurance item.
Birds.
So for example, so for purchase, I'm sorry, you.
No, if there's no
I
trees,
got two.
there's
First of all, I'm pro
there's
solar.
nothing
My
there.
parents have solar. But I got, obviously, I got a question on the insurance side of it. What do you qualify the roof, the age of the roof to put the solar on the roof?
That's why in-person inspection is part of the process. So we really don't want it to be more than 10 years old.
I was gonna say probably 2 years is like.
I see a lot of solar on roofs.
There are
and a lot
companies
of-
out there that install on garbage.
Yeah, I deal with that a lot.
Yeah.
And, they should never even have had anybody even step on the roof, how bad the roof is. and
Right.
how old.
Right. And now solar on a roof, it does protect the shingles. I mean, most of what ages the shingle is
Yeah.
the sun. So solar above the shingle is gonna protect it, not for an indefinite period of time, probably extends the roof life by maybe 10 years. But it depends on the roof. There are companies out there that throw in a free removal, if you need a roof in 10 years, say, and typically that could be part of the negotiation. If you're questioning, listen, my roof, I know I'm gonna have to replace it in 20 years, and this system's obviously still gonna be on it, working. How much is it gonna cost to remove the things? And typically it's $100 to $200 a panel, but it varies by contractor, and then who knows what the labor costs are gonna be in 10 years from now.
That was my second question was if there's a claim going on from like a wind claim, is there anything in the contract that who pays for the storage of the panels and detaching the incentive?
That would be part of the insurance. Yeah, I mean, anything, well, who would pay, if you didn't have solar and your roof was damaged due to an act of God, how would that work?
Well, the insurance company would pay for detaching and resetting, but the storage would sometimes, depending on the contract itself with the solar company, who is sometimes the home,
That would be, I guess that would depend on the policy. That's a scenario.
I'll
that-
have it. I got one now, I got two actually going on right now, one with Allstate, one with State Farm. They're requesting for the solar company's contract because sometimes it'll be there in the small print, who's paying for the storage?
That's a good question. I can't say I've ever dealt with that question, but that is something that would be relevant when you have solar.
Right.
You wouldn't be relevant if you didn't. That's a good question. I don't know that. I mean, it's very early in the solar. Even though solar's been around 50 years, you know, no one's had a system on the roof for decades.
Right.
You know, so it's still a very mature market. These things I think will be worked out. And I'd really love to talk more, but.
Wrap it up.
All right, guys. Any I mean, I'll
I have
spend
one
the next
last question.
20
I've heard
minutes
some
answering
people who have solar, one of the things that's come up, and my wife asked me about this too, when we were talking about this, was like squirrels and other things where they get under the solar and they damage the roof, or can you talk to that issue at all?
Yeah, we can, there's an optional called critter guards where we can wrap the system so nothing can get underneath it. I would say it's very rare, but if your property, if you say, I see squirrels running on my roof all the time.
I can also comment on that and help you with that, because I've done jobs.
Okay.
And people hired me to close that off.
Okay.
Some birds were roosting under there.
Gotcha.
And they wanted to close it off because that's doing damage to the roof under the panels.
Sure.
And you can't get to the roof
Right.
unless you take the panels off, which is a big deal. So they do sell on the internet. You can buy it. There's
It's a wire
route
mesh.
that goes around
Yeah.
the wire mesh that installs very easily. And, you know, not for.
Is that something that you would do as part of your?
I have done jobs, yes.
Okay. Because our contractors, you know, the ones I work with do that on occasion, but it's very rare.
I've done, you know, 3 or 4.
I had it done.
Oh, you have solar?
Yeah.
Okay. It
I
depends
had,
on the house.
I had it all sealed off too, because I had squirrels in there.
Okay.
And he lives in Roebling,
Okay.
so it's not even like he's in a rural,
Right.
so.
Gotcha.
So
All right.
is that something that you could get included if you buy solar?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, it's good to know.